Well, Joe Siracusa is a professor in human security and international diplomacy at RMIT University. I spoke to Joe late today from his home in Melbourne. Joe, good afternoon to you. Is this a racial divide or a law and order divide?
Good afternoon, Carl. Well, look, it's a law and order divide. It's not just it's not a racial divide. Some people are referring to these protests as race riots, but they're not. These are a mob of protesters who are protesting what they see to be the inhumanity of the police forces around America. And they've morphed into something else. I don't know if there are elements there, but when the protest movement or the protest march moves into the area of vandalism, arson, and looting, then it's something else again. But look, the governor of Georgia, the mayor of Atlanta, see this as a law and order issue now, as well as a protest. The White House, of course, saw it as a protest for a minute, and now regards it as a law and order issue. But it's about law and order. It's in its fifth or sixth day now, and it'll probably burn itself out in a couple of days.
Do you really think so? I mean, are you surprised by the venom of these protests? They don't look like calming down anytime soon.
Well, Carl, I well remember the 1960s when I was a young man, and the civil rights movement, the anti-war movement was going on, and those fires were going on for days and days. Watts burned for a week. Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland, and the rest of it. Look, I've seen this movie before, and it all comes down to one thing. That's about the response to police brutality. This is the thing that connects all the protests and rioting like this in American life in the 20th century. Whether it was the race riots in Chicago in 1919, or the Zoot Suiters in California in the 40s, or it was about after the war with the Poles in Detroit. It's all about police violence, police brutality. And that's the one thing that connects all this together. Now, right now, American society, American government, tolerates a great deal of police brutality. The Supreme Court even recognized it to a certain extent. And so while we cannot change some things, we can change the public policy about how we view these things. We can put limits around them. But it's the police brutality that becomes the trigger here. And the other thing, too, Carl, is that these Americans who are on the warpath, they've been locked up for several months. They're suffering from social claustrophobia, and some of them are off work, along with the 44 million other Americans who've been turfed out of work. And so there's all these things come together in sort of a perfect storm. And so they're very angry. Something very unique about this, because it's bookended here by the COVID crisis and by the unemployment, but it still has the same trigger, and that trigger is police brutality. What's different now than it was in the 1960s and before that in the other riots in American life is the social media coverage. We're getting immediate attention by people taking tapes of these things, and the word is spreading very quickly, but it's always about, it starts the same way, with police brutality, and then it moves into something else. Who are the other people involved in this? The civil rights people, the human rights people in America who are leading these protests don't know who the other are, whether they're left-wing extremists, called anti-fascist types, or whether they're right-wing types, whether they're bikies or white supremacists, we don't know. And it's very dangerous to say that other people are involved, because during the Selma riots, when I was a young man in the 50s and 60s, they used to say that about Martin Luther King coming to town, that he was an outside agitator. So who are these people? I guess we're going to find out. And Donald Trump, of course, has got the perfect issue to run on, law and order. Joe Biden's going to have to lift his game in the days ahead, because American protesters simply do not want a Democratic president who promises to go back to being normal. Now, they don't want normal. They want him to do something about it. So both presidential candidates are on the line.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to see these American cities burn. You've been to many of these cities, too, I'm sure. And you know what? It's not just big cities, Carl. It's hit Lincoln, Nebraska, and Fargo, North Dakota. I mean, my God, little tiny towns are taking this kind of hit, too. So all of America is suffering with this, and you can't think of a worse week in American life than this one.
Joe, and that's a big call, isn't it? It just seems to me that the chaos has almost become the contagion, hasn't it? And that only feeds the division that Donald Trump seems to revel in.
Oh, Trump Trump couldn't believe his luck, actually. You know, he was having a bad time first with the with the impeachment, and then the COVID came along, take everyone's mind off of impeachment. And now this takes everybody's mind off of the COVID. And so Trump has got an issue. On the other hand, most people, even the Republicans, say that he's missing in action. He hasn't been leading sort of the national consoling here, and he's sort of missing in action. I don't think he really knows how to empathize with what's going on, in the sense of even George Bush could. George Bush did a lousy job with Katrina, but he could empathize with Americans at the sight of 9/11. I mean, Barack Obama could do this. Bill Clinton did it very, very well. And even Richard Nixon could do it pretty well. So did Lyndon Johnson. But this president doesn't seem to have any charm in him, or the ability to console Americans. So I don't really think he knows what to do, and the people around him are very confused, and they're having a little fight in the White House right now. Number one is, should he go on television and try to calm everybody down by saying he believes the protesters are correct, or should he go on television and says that America will put down this criminal activity? So he's torn between sympathizing and coming down on them like a ton of bricks. So he's going to have to make his decision. I think you and I know which side he's going to come down.
And no matter what your view on Donald Trump is, as you say, Joe, empathy isn't really part of his genetic makeup. We appreciate your time. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much.
Joe Siracusa there from Melbourne.